All right, welcome to the Moynihan Report. I'm Michael Moynihan. We were going to be talking about Ukraine today, but at the last minute, our guest that was previously announced, I think ended up in a Salvadorian prison. We don't know, but we're trying to get to the bottom of this, much like Bukele and Trump. But we're going to talk to you today. So if you're out there in internet land and you're on this Zoom call, get your hackles up, get your dander up, and get your hands up and start asking some questions because we have a lot to talk about. A bunch of things. I don't know. It's very hard to do this job these days because it used to be so like you'd sit down and you're like, all right, what are we going to talk about? And we're now in the position where I sit down at night and I'm like, okay, what do we not want to talk about? Because in that meeting yesterday, which I'm sure you guys all saw or saw snippets of, with President Trump and El Salvador's strongman Bukele, they covered a lot of topics. At one point, Donald Trump said, and this is one of the reasons to talk about Ukraine, beyond the massacre on Sunday, these two things together, and I'm sure you saw that on Sunday, a series of missile strikes, this kind of double tap missile strikes, killed 35, maybe upwards of 40, we know now, people, including children, who were going out to celebrate Palm Sunday. The thing that makes me really annoyed about this is that, all of the people on the crazy right, the stupid right, the conspiratorial right, have been saying, Zelensky and Ukraine, they're the oppressors of Christians. Have you heard this? The oppressors of Christians. They're now Christ is king. That is a dog whistle these days that has little to do with Christ. But we say this quite a bit, and Zelensky's always a target. Not a word, by the way, from any of them. I checked this morning about the fact that the Putin regime killed 35 people, all innocents, on their way to a celebration, an Easter celebration, a Palm Sunday celebration. Didn't seem to bother anyone. So this is very selective outrage. So we can discuss that. We can discuss the fact that Donald Trump in the Oval Office said something mysterious, by the way. People are kind of misreading this in one weird way. Is at the beginning, Donald Trump says, Zelensky shouldn't do this. It was Biden's war. Putin shouldn't have invaded. 5 seconds later, he goes on, and this is the cognitive dissonance with Donald Trump, says that it was Ukraine that started the war. We've heard this before, right? So that was dispiriting. And the day after, 35 Ukrainians were brutally slaughtered for no reason whatsoever. And this is, of course, an administration that said not only that it wouldn't have happened if Donald Trump was president, because Vladimir Putin wouldn't dare, but he would stop it on day one, right? There's been a series of supposed ceasefires, a lot of strong-arm tactics against primarily the Ukrainians, and Steve Witkoff wandering around cluelessly in Red Square, but nothing has stopped, right? So I want to talk about that if you guys are so willing, because it's been annoying me a little bit. And the other day, one more thing. The other day, we had Olivia Reingold on. A great response to her. People love her. I love her. I'm sounding Trumpian there, aren't I? People love her. I love her. But we talked about Luigi Mangione. And I'm going to ask Jason, we're kind of winging this because there was supposed to be somebody here talking to us. But I'm going to ask Jason, producer Jason, if we can find the clip. It's all over. It's literally the only clip, I think, on X right now of CNN talking to the great Taylor Lorenz. And when I say great, if you're new to the show, I don't think she's great. This is sarcastic. Taylor Lorenz talking about Luigi Mangione on CNN. If we can pull that clip, that would be great. It's all over the place. I've given them no warning. I'm being a bit of a dick today. But that has, inspired me and a lot of people. And it was right after the conversation that we had with Olivia about this. And this is a new version of radical chic of this person who is there for the working class, apparently, says Taylor Lorenz, who apparently went to a Swiss boarding school. She's denied that. But she did grow up in Greenwich, Connecticut. So I'm glad that the workers in this workers' administration on one side and the other side, these people that are plumping for you workers are all people that went to Ivy League schools to live in Greenwich, et cetera. So there we have it. So a few things that we want to talk about. There's a lot going on also with Bukele saying that he will not return a person who is a Salvadorian citizen. It's actually a complicated case. People are being a little too cavalier about it. But the Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that the administration should get him back from El Salvador and bring him to the United States. I'm sure people have opinions on that too. But one of the weird things about that, by the way, is Bukele in the Oval Office. This is when, people have taken on the Trumpiness. World leaders have taken on this Trumpiness. And he says, what am I going to do? How am I going to smuggle a terrorist back in the United States? A man who has not been accused of terrorism or convicted of terrorism or convicted of any crime, as a matter of fact, just been accused of being a member of MS-13. How can he sneak him back into the country when the Supreme Court ordered it? I mean, watching this stuff, you wonder what planet you're living on. And as a response to this, Donald Trump kind of sits there smiling because somebody's doing a Trump type impression next to him. He loves it. No one had pointed out that 8 people have already come back from that prison. You can find them, right? He is the president / strongman of that country. You don't think he'd get him out if he wanted to. There's some sort of kabuki theater going on here, and it's quite depressing. And it is a thing about, presidential power. I mean, he wants to say to the court that I don't need to do this thing because I don't think it's a just decision. Now, there are some people making some pretty sensible arguments saying, look, the guy is a Salvadorian citizen. He is here illegally, et cetera, et cetera. And we can hash out those wrinkles in the case if any of you viewers, listeners want to do so. But that is kind of irrelevant when the court makes a 9-0 decision. Those are quite rare. One more thing on this. I just wanted to point out something that was really disturbing. Well, 2 things were disturbing about that Oval Office meeting. And so much packed into it. It's like a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode. There's levels and the stories will all come together at the end. But the thing about Donald Trump saying, actually to journalists, and then caught on a hot mic saying, we want to get the homegrown ones there. So what does that mean? He said, you need to build more. This is to Bukele. They have this mega max prison, the biggest in the world. He says you need to build 4 or 5 more because we have some homegrown issues. What is he talking about? Well, you know what he's talking about. He wants American citizens to be shipped off to El Salvador. Okay. Believe what he does, not what he says. That is a line that has been blurred pretty consistently during the Trump 2.0. That was something we could say before, right? Just, he says a lot of bullshit. Just watch what he does, right? Okay. That's what he did in the first time around. That was kind of an okay rule. It's not an okay rule anymore. And that actually pushes up against one other thing that he said during this, marathon Rogan-like 3-hour meeting, or it felt like it was 3 hours. I don't know. I was just watching clips. It just felt like, is there a subject he's not going to cover? Maybe Martyr Maid in World War II and whether Churchill was a good guy. Maybe he'll cover that during this meeting. But he said another thing about CBS. CBS had 2 stories on 60 Minutes this weekend. One was an interview with Zelensky, which precipitated the comment that, he shouldn't have started this war, which made Trump very angry. And the other one was about prisoners, I think, people being shipped off. I didn't watch the episode, but I saw the clips of it. But that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I've seen the episode. This is actually a very important point. It doesn't matter because it's not about the content of the episode. It's about the president saying to camera again that we got to go after these guys. They should have a target on their back. CBS has already been sued by Donald Trump for, and Jason, you can fact check this for me, I think $10 billion. It's like an Austin Powers like thing. He's like, 10 billion? I think we're gonna do 10 billion. So he sued over an interview that he was not involved in, that he was not, it was the Kamala Harris interview, that if you've ever done TV, and you notice that we're on TV now, so I have a little bit of experience in this, and you do a long interview, you have to cut it down. So he was offended that it was cut down to make her look good. So he sued them. So the president of the United States is doing his own form of lawfare against CBS, which he's been doing against law firms too. Those who have, let's see, was it? CBS. Oh yeah, they responded to this, by the way, by saying that they would donate $20 billion dollar. They moved to dismiss it. There's a law firms that are actually donating time. They have moved to dismiss that $20 billion lawsuit. I was wrong. We should have doubled it from 10 to 20. So there we are. And I think there's a number of issues here. And I've seen a number of people on the right, and this is who I'm paying attention to now, because the party has been kidnapped by MAGA, has been taken over by mindless economic populism. There are some things in there that would be traditionally conservative positions, particularly on immigration and such like that. But where this is a party that's been body snatched, and where are the conservatives that are sticking up? There are a few. There are a few out there. There are none on the Hill, with the exception of Don Bacon, who has been surprisingly good and surprisingly effective. You've not heard him before, so maybe unlike the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world, where you make your name sucking up to the king, you can make your name by trying to sling some arrows at the king. And Don Bacon is one of them. Rand Paul has been pretty consistent on spending issues. I think a little soft on Trump, despite his rock-ribbed libertarianism. But we're in a situation now where there are not a lot of people that are lining up foursquare against this stuff that is deeply concerning. From what position? And by the way, honestly, go fuck yourself if you're going to send me the message that you have Trump derangement syndrome, blah, blah, blah. I've gotten enough of them. Go back and listen to what I was saying for the last 4 years in the Biden administration. We were brutal on them, and it's time to be brutal on the people who have the power now. This is very simple, people. I'm not a team player. You shouldn't be a team player either. If you're on any team and you're on the right, let me give you a little tip. Be on the team of the constitutionalists. Take out the Constitution and do what Bill Maher did, by the way, and handed Steve Bannon a Constitution on an episode of Real Time on Friday when he said, it's fine. He can do a third term. No, he can't. And here's why. Because it's codified in the Constitution, which conservatives used to pretend to love, right? But that doesn't exist so much anymore. All right, do we have anyone to talk to, or do you want to go? Well, let's talk to someone first. And then I want to play that Luigi Mangione clip, because it is totally fucking insane. It is like batshit level. I mean, this is like radical chic in the weirdest possible way, from a journalist who's been fired from a number of places. She was fired from Washington Post and now has a Substack. So ain't nothing wrong with that, by the way, having a Substack. It's not where all the crazies go. All right, who do we have up, Jason? Who's that? Vincent. Let's get Vincent up here. How's it going, Vincent? Can I see Vincent?
Great. I've enjoyed your conversation for many years.
Thank you,
Just
Vincent.
just so the audience knows, I'm a 9/11 first responder decorated by Congress and the state of Connecticut and the state of New York. So I'm 68 years old. I've been involved with public policy, 45-year career. I've met over 100 people in the House, and I, over the years, got to have a relationship with Senator McCain and Senator Kerry. I supported George Herbert Walker Bush and President George W. Bush. I'm not involved. I'm not registered in either party anymore. The people on the far right started attacking me and saying I was a rhino because there's somebody named David M. Walker, who was the Comptroller General of the United States for George Herbert Walker Bush and President Clinton, who I was a protege of. So I have a deep, deep understanding of the United States budget.
The Republican Party doesn't seem to have any understanding of the budget.
So I know that the DOD budget is $900 billion.
Yeah.
And, I know that Medicare and Medicaid is $2 trillion. I know that the fiscal year ending 9/30/2024 was $7 trillion. So we had revenue of $5 trillion, expenses of $7 trillion, a deficit of $2 trillion. So negative 2 trillion. The budget that was approved, we're going to have the same amount of $7 trillion as the ninth for the 9/30 2025. So the budget, the expenses will be higher than last year. So when everyone in the media, right, left, center, Newsmax, Newsmax, Fox, ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, all day, you know, these are like all insider baseball conversations that, I know people with law degrees, CPAs, PhDs in chemistry who will ask me about the budget because they don't have any understanding of the budget. So they'll call me and say, "Is it true that you know that Doge cut 1 trillion?" Well, you can't cut 1 trillion if the expenses are 7 trillion. And when Doge first started, they said they were going to cut 2 trillion. Well, you're a real intelligent guy. You've been in the media for years. Mark Halperin, all of us, you can't cut 2 trillion out of 7 trillion.
No,
So,
Vincent.
so
Let me say this quickly. I mean, this is a point that I've been discussing, and on the
right,
podcast that I do with Matt Welch and Camille Foster at Fifth Column.
yes,
Matt expressed some excitement about the initial Doge editorial that was written in the Wall Street Journal by Vivek Ramaswamy, and I guess the other was Elon Musk was the other byline on that, because on paper this is what people like us like. We don't want like government waste, and we do like the idea that people should go in there, but more with a scalpel than a sledgehammer. But also, one of the things that bothers me is we don't really know who is doing this. I know the attacks on them have been kids with laptops and backpacks who are Silicon Valley types. Okay, they might be good at this, but there are a lot of people that we could recommend that we know in Washington, D.C., who really know the budget well and really know where the bloat happens. And this seems like a PR exercise in so many ways, particularly when you say we can actually eliminate a budget deficit by cutting things from Doge. It's impossible. Like Republicans used to be criticized by saying we're gonna defund PBS and NPR. Look, you can do that and just make it the argument that we don't think these things should be funded or shouldn't be state-funded media. There's a perfectly reasonable argument, one that I mostly agree with on that, but don't pretend that it's going to make a dent in the budget. This is the same thing that we're seeing with the Doge stuff. Again, in principle, I have no problem with it. I think that's fantastic. Government waste is great. But there's also this cognitive dissonance inside. You've been called a rhino. The modern Republican Party, you're a Republican name only. But what is the name now? The N is important. Because the N, if you were a rhino in 1985, would have been, I don't know, you were like a liberal Republican that didn't believe in tax cuts and supply side economics that you would see in the kind of Reagan Revolution. Now I don't understand what it is. It's you are not in our club, because you see something like people pretend that they care about spending. There's a classic thing that conservatives cared about, right? And so you have Donald Trump the other day saying something that is in direct contradiction to something that I got slightly excited about from Pete Hegseth. Because the one thing that you could never touch as a Republican was defense spending. We want to cut, no defense spending. You can believe in a muscular military and that America and Pax Americana, et cetera, and do understand that there's always that $5,000 toilet on the USS whatever. So Pete Hegseth said 5%. Every year, $850 billion, 5% every year reduction. Donald Trump flying
and
off.
and that was completely not true. And I work with people that are defense contractors. That's my bailiwick, my wheelhouse. And I told them, no, the budget for year ending 2025 will be higher. It turned out to be 13% higher
Well, and Donald Trump the
for
other day,
defense.
this is the thing.
Those cuts were all public relations.
Illusory.
They're
Yes.
not cutting. Okay, they're not cutting the. So Pete came out and said 5%, 5%, 5%. Well, no. The truth is, it's not going to 700 billion from 900 billion. It's going to a trillion.
Well, this is
In,
what Donald Trump said in the Oval Office the other day. 2 cameras through a bank of cameras. He said, "This is we're planning to blow up the budget. We're going to give it. We're going to make it a trillion." This was a boast. This was not something, and in direct contradiction of his defense secretary, because they don't have they're not reading off the same hymn sheet, and that is essentially when you have a party that has so many schismatic moments in the past 10 years. I get like look at the Democratic Party. You have the squad, you're gonna have the left wing of the party, you're gonna have centrist Democrats, you're gonna have sort of Massachusetts Democrats and the Bob Kerrey Democrats from the Midwest. That's always going to exist. But what happens in the Republican Party now is that just the core principles seem to have evaporated. Steve Bannon is on Bill Maher's show, and he says we're going to go after the billionaires. We're going to go and Josh Rogan, an old friend of mine, says you're going to go after your donors, and he says yes. Don't touch Medicare. Don't touch Medicaid. These are our core. Like, he's essentially a social democrat. And I interviewed him one time, and the second the cameras went off, he went on a long tirade. It was quite funny. I mean, he's a very personable guy and very smart guy, about how much he loved AOC. And she was a kind of model for a lot of things that he wanted to see in a party. And that's when I realized that the American conservative movement was becoming the European conservative movement. If you look around Europe, all of these anti-immigration populist parties, not a single one, with the exception of one in Norway, a party called the Fremskrittspartiet, the Progress Party in Norway, is free market. All of them are social democrats. Their argument is fairly simple. We want big welfare payments, but just not for immigrants. We don't want them for Algerians, and it's all through the prism of welfare. You want your hospitals to work, you want everything to work, but it's these people that are taking it. There's some truth to that, et cetera, but they are social democratic parties, and that is essentially where the Republican Party is going. So the American voter doesn't have much of a choice at this point, do they? They don't. They have two parties that are social democratic parties.
I totally agree, and I know it's been on for a while. Did you grow up watching Firing Line when you were a young man?
I did indeed.
Okay,
yes.
So
we might have looked at it a few times. I
was some middle class kid who went to public school, and my father didn't understand why I was watching Firing Line, and I was watching Firing Line because I loved history, and it improved my vocabulary.
Yes.
That was the first time I heard the word sycophant. That was the first time I heard the word pedestrian. And I started using these words, and I got a scholarship to go to Villanova, and I did well. And, every day I think, what would Bill Buckley think? It's like, I think, don't you think the same thing? I mean, you used to watch Firing Line. What
did,
would
yes.
Bill Buckley think?
Well, two things about this quickly, and then we're going to see if we're going to move on to it. But I appreciate it, Vincent. No, it's fine. I appreciate it. The one thing is that I grew up in a very similar family. My dad was in a union. My mother worked at a pharmacy, and I watched Firing Line. So there was something that went horribly wrong from their perspective.
Right.
Like, what is going on here? But, Buckley always used to say that, like, why do you use all these big words? And he said, because I know them and you should look them up. And that's right. Yeah. I mean, I appreciate that. But keep in mind, there are two moments for Buckley. One is in the 60s when he runs out the kooks from the John Birch Society. It's a concerted effort. We got to get these crazies out. Now Laura Loomer is in the friggin' White House telling people who they should fire from the NSA. And on the other hand, in the 80s, he does a thing, including people in his own magazine, a writer named Joe Sobran, who's everyone's forgotten about, getting rid of the anti-Semites, because there was a lot of anti-Semitism that was creeping in. And he said, this shall not stand, this shall not pass, no pasaran. It got to a point where it was getting crazy. There's no one here in the party now that has the balls to stand up to Donald Trump and say, and I'm saying this, by the way, from a conservative perspective. I'm not saying that you have to be a liberal, you have to be Elizabeth Warren. From conservative first principles, I'm not a conservative. I mean, I share some common stuff with conservatives, but stand up for it. Stand up for it, because you know what? This economy is a disaster, and it's going to be more disastrous until he rolls it back. Every time that market has spiked and there's been a little bit of an upswing in consumer confidence, it's because they said, we're not going to do what we promised, right? We're not going to, if they do that, people are happy. All right, Vincent, I really appreciate it.
Thank
Come
you
back.
so much for
And,
listening.
you
gave me a
you're
lot
a
of
better guest
time.
than the
Thank
people
you.
that abandon us on days of shooting.
Thank you so much.
All right, Haley, I appreciate it, Vincent. Haley, are you there?
Yes, of course. Hi, Michael. I love you, love your work, love the show.
Oh, thank you, Haley. It's very kind of you.
I just have a quick question, kind of in vein, like with what you were beginning about, like all the conspiracy theories and stuff. If you happened, because the other internet crazy story of the week, I think, was the Dave Smith, Douglas Murray,
Yes.
Joe Rogan
Yes.
extravaganza. So I just wanted to know if you had any thoughts about that as a whole,
Yeah.
and I also wanted to mention something about the Taylor Lorenz
Okay,
derangement.
let's take these one at a time. Let's take the first one, the Dave Smith.
Sure.
Douglas Murray. I mean, the first thing I will say about that is it's I don't tend not to have time to watch 3-hour debates. I watched a lot of it, and I was like dropping my daughter off, and she's like, why are you listening to this plummy British guy yell at a comedian about Israel? What's happening? And I was like, no, your dad is an enormous loser, so like just bear with me. But a couple things that I thought about it were, I think everyone's wrong in the sense that they're trying to look at this as if it was a boxing match. Who won this round? Who won that round? Who won on points? I don't really care about that. The confirmation bias that you get from everyone who's on, like, there's nobody's on Dave Smith's side who's like, he lost, or is on Douglas Murray's side and he lost. Like, there is this confirmation bias that's all over this. But one of the things I noticed initially was that, and I said this to some friends, there was a thing at my university, and I went to university way back in the day, that when conservatives came on campus, people right of center, people with like heterodox views, they were always debating someone. It was never to give a lecture. Noam Chomsky would come and give his lectures. I saw a few of them. These other people would come give their lectures. If it was somebody right of center, they would come and they would have a debate, which is fine, but there's a reason for it. That's what struck me about this. Douglas Murray's been on the show before, and he went on his own. He was promoting a book that just came out. Was actually weirdly promoted by Donald Trump on True Social. And he was made to debate a comedian that does, like, he's a podcaster. I'll just say that. I don't want to be the person, I disagree with him on almost everything. I just don't want to be dismissive. He's been dismissive of me in the past. I maybe try to take the high road here and say, when you say somebody's just a comedian, look, the guy's a pundit. He's out there, he's doing it. And I think what he says about Ukraine, for instance, is completely wrong and reckless in some ways but that said, probably the most trafficked video about the history of the Ukraine conflict is a clip of Dave Smith on Joe Rogan that has 12 million views. And, so here, let's get to the Douglas Murray point. You've never been to Ukraine. You've never been to the Middle East. And now the response to that is everyone laughing and saying, oh, you can't talk about this. Dave Smith's response to that, and I want to just talk about this because I think it's important, not just to get into this like he said, she said debate that if you don't watch it, you don't care about, because it's about authority and the appeals to authority and what happened to the sense of authority in experts, particularly after COVID. They were wrong a lot in COVID, and I think people have made a mistake and said, therefore, still, guys, if you have a lump, go to the doctor. Right? Don't trust the guy who's got a fucking podcast, okay? Their experts are there and they exist for a reason. But that appeal to expertise, people I think misunderstood, because I think Douglas is right, and actually, I think Dave Smith's right in a way too. When he says, look, I've never been to Nazi Germany, but I can talk about it. I have actually, and I'm like, did he take that from me? I've said the exact same phrase before. But Douglas, in response, has a thing that I think was funny and smart when he said, no, you can't time travel, but you can travel. And to say that going to a place is not an additive, a positive additive, is bizarre to me. I've been to Israel. I've been out with the IDF. I have been to the West Bank. I've been with Palestinians there. I've been to Ukraine. I've been out in a place that was 5 minutes or 5 hours after I left was blown up by a Russian missile. And, you see these people living desperately. And it adds a lot. You understand the struggle in a way that you wouldn't otherwise. But that said, it doesn't mean you can't comment on the sort of geopolitical situation, but that's what everyone got bogged down in this debate. It was like, well, oh, he's an expert. You know, it's like, yeah, there's a lot to be said for expertise. There's a lot to be said, by the way, this debate, they're talking about this guy, Daryl Cooper. I don't want to get in the weeds here. He was an article about him in the New York Times the other day, this martyr-made chap who's kind of like an amateur historian, and he reads a lot. But he doesn't do archival work. That's important. You find stuff in archival work. I don't know if he reads German, but he said something that I thought wasn't true. And I went into an archive that I know pretty well because I care about this stuff and I'm writing something about this now. And I was like, I don't think that's true. If you're only using secondary sources, you can actually produce a great podcast. You can actually know a lot. Don't ever let somebody say that you can't. But there is something to be said for primary sources going, if there weren't these people that did it, what would Daryl Cooper and these people rely on? They're relying on books that experts wrote. It doesn't mean that you're not an expert. You can be on the way to that. But doing your own research, understanding the source material, and this is the most important thing, having a conclusion and then trying to fill it in with facts. You know, Churchill was the bad guy. Let's go find the evidence of that. Bengal famine and blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's what you're going to do. Or you can be somebody who writes a book about Churchill and dedicates 10 years of your life to it, reading all the letters and all the diaries, and then coming out and saying, oh, he's a bit of a shit, right? That's different. Versus this is all political. This is history being wielded as a political cudgel. It's always been this way. People have always done it, but let's recognize what it is. These are people who have a political point of view. You know, it doesn't surprise me that Dave Smith comes up and has a view about Ukraine, which is the view about Israel. I mean, I make fun of my dear friend Bacho, Ungar Sargon, who's out there saying a lot of things that I disagree with about the economy. But Bacho is like, you know, horrible, my opinion, has terrible ideas about Ukraine, and then has totally different ideas about Israel. I'm like, well, at least you're keeping me on my toes. And you don't have that kind of litany. This is what I should believe about this. And the final thing I'll say about this is that here's something for everyone to think about. And people have different answers to this. And I'm wondering what you guys out there in two-way land think about it. But why is it, and just a question, why is it in the past that if you believed in lower taxes, a minimal government state, did you have one opinion about guns or about abortion? Like, how do these things interact? Because people like, my opinion, people like being on teams, which is why Trump's not getting a lot of pushback from conservatives. They're playing as a team. They fought the team of Joe Biden for so long. Now they're in power. They want to, exact retribution on the team of Joe Biden. But I think that when it comes to history, when it comes to politics, it's a hard thing to do. But one of the sensible things to do is to try to avoid playing on a team. It's just never, you come to better and more interesting conclusions if you're kind of all over the place. And it might line up that way. It's possible. But team stuff is, I just think it's poisonous. But you want to say something about Mangione and the Taylor Lorenz, right?
I've been seeing the clip going around and hearing commentary on it. And I just wanted to make a point because she keeps going back to the fact that how women love serial killer dramas and all of how it's like,
that's not very convincing.
Like a fandom or something. And as somebody who does sometimes tend to like those crime docs,
sure.
Not gonna lie, I do, I come from it as a total different, I don't think any woman is watching a Ted Bundy documentary and going, I want that guy.
Yeah.
I think they're all just going how can a perfectly good human being do something like that?
Yeah. So
I think that's the majority of people who watch all these Netflix serial killer documentaries. Yeah. I don't think they're coming any way in the way that she's saying that they're all lusting after these crazy people.
I think she might be giving away her own game there. Because, the weird thing is the thing about good-looking serial killers and everything, the idea of this is people kind of internalize that if you're really good looking, then you have a much easier life. That's literally the basic component of this. And they're like, wow, he went and shot a guy. And like, you saw the guy who tried to burn down Governor Shapiro's house in Pennsylvania. Do you see the picture of him? You're like, yeah, that's the guy. He's
and
like
that's what
this lunatic guy.
Said, if he was hot, he'd be the new Luigi. Like,
Correct.
That's what
Correct.
he said. And
Yeah,
it would be
but
totally
You know what we're going to do? Hang tight for 1 second. I mentioned this CNN clip, and I put the crack staff of the Moynihan Report to pull it up. And this is a clip, and we're going to play it now, but this is a clip from a CNN a documentary. The guy shared it is the host, who I've met once, I think. He's an Irish guy. What's his name? If you can find his name, too, it's like O'Donnell or some Irish thing. It's really not important. The least important part of this is like, my name is Garrett O'Donnell, but he interviews her and they play this clip thinking, I guess, that this is a great thing and people are going to love it. And I think the opposite happened. Let's watch this clip from CNN interview with Taylor Lorenz on Luigi Mangione.
Hilarious to see these millionaire media pundits on TV clutching their pearls about someone standing a murderer when this is the United States of America, as if we don't lionize criminals, as if we don't have, we don't stand murderers of all sorts, and we give them Netflix shows. There's a huge disconnect between the narratives and angles that sort of mainstream media pushes and what the American public feels. And you see that in moments like this. And I can tell you, I saw the biggest audience growth that I've ever seen, because people were like, oh, some journalist is actually speaking to the anger that we feel.
The women who gather outside court in New York.
So you're gonna see women especially that feel like, oh my God, right? Like, here's this man who's revolutionary, who's famous, who's handsome, who's young, who's smart. He's a person that seems this morally good man, which is hard to find.
Yeah, I just realized women will literally date an assassin before they swipe right on me. That's where we are. I'm sure you wouldn't like to be compared to a Trump supporter, but some of how people cannot understand why people have sympathies for Mangione strikes me as the same as a lot of media not understanding why people support Trump.
I totally agree.
It's because a lot of people are just really, really desperate.
They want somebody to take on the system. They want somebody to tear down these barbaric establishment institutions.
I mean, this is one of those things that you don't know where to begin, but what a disgrace in almost every way. It shows you something that I've been saying for a very long time, that one, and maybe I'm an example of this too, but one doesn't have to be smart to be on television. You have two half-wits, giggling at each other and braying like morons. I mean, could you imagine if that were somebody who was a different murderer? And there's no pushback from the CNN interview, but like head, back, haha, let me make a joke about my dating life. It's absolutely just atrocious. I mean, I would stop that person in an interview and say, why should we not celebrate him? That's what we do in America. That's not what we do in America. I mean, if you're exceptionally stupid, that might be what you think. When you turn on Netflix, those are not television shows about the woman who killed her baby and got away with it, saying, good on, nice job, you did a great job. The fact that we watch documentaries about the Holocaust is not because we like the Holocaust, you fucking dummy. I mean, this kind of stuff is so enraging to me, because do you know who has to see that? Look, and again, separate it out. This is a very simple thing to do, because morality demands that you do this, and it's a simple-minded thing that says this guy is, part of an, organization that does some bad things sometimes, and so therefore he should be killed. That stretch is wild and insane to me. But let's just take it back from her saying, he's the most moral man, and no pushback whatsoever from the host, and in his sunglasses and laughing. I'm sorry. I'm just too pissed off. But you know who has to see that? Let me go back to the point. The two children who don't have a father, because this piece of shit decided that he knew what was best for America. I thought this was going to change things. And he decided that he was going to take a life.
Yeah.
You know, she is a woman of the left. I've met her a number of times. And it's interesting that people on her sort of tiny lane of the left support the death penalty. But they do so without a trial. That's important, guys. We can't have a trial. He has to decide and kill the guy in Midtown Manhattan, right? And isn't opposed to guns, apparently, at this point. It's a ghost gun, 3D printed. That's fine. All of this stuff is fine because he is kicking against the pricks. I mean, get the fuck out of here. You read Luigi Mangione's manifesto. You're going to take a guy's life. You have days on the run. You produce 250 barely literate words, and you go to fucking Penn. And he is some rich kid, and she is some rich kid, telling us what it's like to live without health insurance. Luigi Mangione wasn't even a United Healthcare customer, as it were. And, you know, I'm not going to say the thing that I always say. I always do that thing, well, you know, not to say that what they do is great and that they don't have problems. That's giving in to that kind of level of terrorism. We should have a conversation because I killed a guy in Midtown Manhattan, who, by the way, unlike somebody who grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, his father was a grain elevator operator. He was somebody who worked his way up. There are a million things one can say about this. This has precipitated no intelligent discussion about the healthcare system at all. There hasn't, I haven't seen any. And not as if this hasn't been a conversation we've been having for a long time anyway. Anyway, Michael, that kind of thing on television, getting the head nodding from a CNN correspondent, I think is, in my world, like honestly, I'm gonna be totally frank about this and people can disagree with me if they want. I think that's a fireable offense. That's a disgrace. You did not do your job as a journalist. You're laughing as someone saying, gunning down a father of two in Midtown Manhattan, no judge, no jury, you're the executioner and you're the judge, is something that is heroic and morally upright. It's the thing that one does if they're a morally upstanding citizen. Unbelievable. I'm sorry, but there's very few things that exercise me as much as this have. That's why I was on TMZ. I went on TMZ. Can you fucking believe it? I went on TMZ twice about this because I couldn't believe that this was the conversation that was happening. And you know, then last night, by the way, one more thing about this. Last night, or 2 nights ago in Coachella, somebody that I like, somebody that I've met, somebody who's in a band with somebody I went to high school with, a guy named Keith Morris. You know Keith Morris, who was in Off and Black Flag and the band called the Circle Jerks. He was on stage at Coachella and he was chanting something like 100 or 1,000 more Mangiones. Like, what kind of society? We want people. I'm glad that we want vigilante justice and Americans just gunning people down in the street for policy positions they don't appreciate. That's great. If that is where we are, in the sense that now we're being provocative, this is the punk rock thing to do. It's just lame old man shit. Like, how old is Keith Morris now? 50 something? He's an old man. This is what you're going to be to punk rock now. Bill Burr doing the same thing. You know, I hope that, by the way, where does it end, people? McDonald's is bad for us. Raises healthcare costs. Makes healthcare very expensive because it's a very obese country. Mangione in his thing said we have terrible health outcomes, not pointing out that we have a terrible food culture. We have enormous amounts of gun violence. We have a fentanyl epidemic, all of these things. Not factored in as just United Healthcare, I suppose. But that sort of thing, where does it end? Will there be a person with a shitty Substack who gets fired from everywhere she works because she's a half-wit? Will there be a Substack from her defending somebody when they shoot the CEO of McDonald's or Coca-Cola? Right? Those are bad things. Philip Morris. Can we kill the CEO of Philip Morris? Why not? Let's just start killing the people that we think are net negatives in American life and harmful. Let's just do that. Let's not argue it. Oh, anyway. All right. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for getting annoyed by that.
No, I just wanted to say, do you think that it's that when it comes from the Taylor Lorenz's, the media class, do you think that this is genuine? Do you think that she's genuinely has these feelings and thoughts?
Yeah.
Or is it?
I think she
100%
genuinely. I think
correct.
she genuinely. I think there's people that obviously are playing to their audience, and there's some audience capture in this stuff. I think the young girls that are, it is mostly women. I mean, Olivia Reingold pointed that out when she had been in the courthouse for Mangione's hearing. I think those girls are just confused, and I think that they're not really thinking about it seriously. Some 18-year-old girl has no experience with the healthcare system, doesn't understand the complexities of it and what's good about it and what's bad about it. So I think that stuff is probably not something to get exercise about. But this woman should know better. And I just think she's dumb. I just think that moral calculation is the moral calculation of a child. This person does something bad, so it's heroic to kill them. And also, in none of these clips, by the way, does she ever say what this guy did in particular. Is he someone within the healthcare system? I don't know this, by the way. I'm just completely guessing and making this up. Maybe he's somebody within the healthcare system that says we have to reform X element or Y element, and you just shot him. Do you know? Does he know? Does he know the machinations of what's going on inside of United Healthcare? I doubt it. But anyway, fuck them all, to be honest. All right, Hugo, thank you. I appreciate it. We got Hugo here.
Yeah, that's me.
Hi, Hugo, the woolly mammoth. Good to see you, man.
Hey, I just want you to know that I hope everyone is enjoying this free swim as much as I am.
Oh, good.
And it's always good to hear from Haley too. She's always has an interesting point of view.
I'm a fan. So you're saying that we should have guests cancel rather rudely at the last minute more often. I'm in favor of that too. Yeah, makes my life easier.
So I'm going to take a cue from Haley, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on a recent Andrew Sullivan post where he has canceled an overseas a trip to the UK for a speech he was going to give because he's a naturalized citizen.
Yeah,
and he has real concerns about. Because he's been so vociferous against the Trump administration,
yeah,
he's truly concerned that he might not be able to get back into the country. What do you think about that?
I gotta love that you put me on the spot for.
I'm sorry.
No, it's totally fine. This is what we do. This is our business. Andrew's an old friend. I would say that I think that's a bit heavy breathing. I don't think that's. The conversation we're having about this guy who is maybe an MS-13 member, maybe not, he was in the country illegally. I mean, that's something that we can't lose sight of. And he actually is a citizen of El Salvador. So whatever you think about the court ruling, that stuff is true. When it comes to people with green cards, you're not a citizen, that sort of palette of rights that you have as a citizen is diminished, right? Not majorly so, but it's diminished. And I think the Trump administration is going, wildly overboard in punishing its critics and its enemies and, looking at people's phones and when they're coming to the country, if they have a green card. Andrew has a passport. Andrew's a citizen. That's a place that I don't think that we'll get to. And I hope I'm right. And I don't think that I'm going to be wrong about this. Because I think there is a limit. And this is the question you have to ask yourself. Is there a limit to that level of sycophancy from the party and from Americans who are part of the cult? And by the way, I say this very deliberately. Not MAGA voters. There's a lot of MAGA voters who are disillusioned or let's wait it out. But there is a small percentage of real cultists who, he could say the people who support invading Greenland, which seems to me a rather insane, misbegotten idea. I don't know what the Fallujah of Greenland will be, but I don't want to see it, right? But this is the people who are in the party and are lining up foursquare behind him. Every single one of them, you can find them saying the opposite about tariffs, about Donald Trump. I mean, his own vice president said he's half a Nazi. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, those people have to realize that unlike Contra Steve Bannon, he's not going to have a third term. Constitution's not going to allow it, and the American people won't allow it. And he's also going to be very old, right? So these people keep forgetting. He's like, oh, we can do 5 terms. It's like, he's going to be 100? He's an old man. I mean, I know he doesn't care because he's going to die soon, but nevertheless, he is going to die soon. It's not going to happen forever. So once I think they feel freed from some of this stuff, which, by the way, is a total indictment of our politicians and our political class, that they're so married to the party. And it's the moments when I wish that we were a bit more European in one sense, in, you know, that we had a lot of parties making up coalitions. Because I'd love to have Rand Paul like have a constitutionalist wing and they have their own party. And then they have to make deals with the Trump people, and the Trump people have to make deals with the Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski types. That'd be great. I mean, I'm actually for that now. I never was in the past. But once those people can stand up and say, this is a lame duck guy, there's also a career to be made here. Like I said before, there's the Marjorie Taylor Greenes, the Lauren Boeberts. They've made their career being North Korean about their sycophancy vis-a-vis Trump. Doesn't matter if you like Trump, you cannot help cringing watching that stuff. And in that moment, when you know, when Andrew Sullivan comes home and they give him a hard time at the border, I think that I do have some faith in the American people. I have less faith in the American political class that they will say, okay, this has to stop. Now, couple that with, if you had a great booming economy and you start becoming a little more authoritarian, Americans actually don't care. This sucks about, people tend not to care about these things. And you look at polling on this stuff, you can get away with a lot. Once it starts hurting your pocketbook and you see the economy doing this and like, oh, well, it's just the Wall Street guys. That's not true. I mean, look at these exemptions that you have. Who gets hurt in this? I mentioned the other day on the show my old babysitter who started a company, and she's one woman in her kitchen. She sources a lot of her stuff from China, and she said, I'm destroyed. Guess who's not destroyed? Apple. Because Apple got exemptions for iPhones, chip makers got their exemptions, the laptop makers got their exemptions, the flat screen TVs, all these people saying, do you really need a flat screen TV? It's like, first of all, don't tell me what I need. I don't like that kind of politics, number one. And number two, apparently Donald Trump thinks you need one. So who is benefiting and who is losing? The small guys on Main Street, quote unquote, are getting screwed by these tariffs. Even if you're working at a factory where a lot of the input costs come from stuff overseas, right? And then all of a sudden we have this. We have this situation now. But no one will stand up. And to sort of wind the point back around, sorry for being so circuitous about this, but I think Andrew's wrong. But I also want to be hopeful and say that amongst conservatives, there's going to be somebody, one hopes. I haven't been reassured yet, but the confluence of all this kind of disaster maybe will make people say, okay, we have to restrain the power specifically of the presidency. The imperial presidency is bad. We always hated that. People on the left, people on the right. And now, what legislation is being passed? Almost none, right? You know, omnibus bills and things like that. Because everything is being done with the president's pen. I mean, this is a wild moment that we're in, that the president has this kind of imperial, kind of, you know, regal, and I mean not regal in a sort of dispositionally regal, but in the sense that he thinks he's a king that can just write all this stuff. This is not a left-right issue. It should not be. And if you're supporting it, I just think there are people, and maybe there's people out there that want to say something that are supporting it, but I think that people who are supporting this are supporting their team and really not thinking it through. And there's going to be a long tail on bad politics, because you always have to remember, if you let the guy that you hate do it and you let the guy that you love do it, there's going to be a different reaction. Oh, I did this. Trump can do it. Democrats win the next election. They're just executive order after executive order. You think Republicans are going to be okay with this? Come on. Anyway, I hope that I'm trying to answer the question without attacking my friend too. So, but yeah, thank you. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Thank you for being the anti-grifter journalist out there. We appreciate that.
Can I say something that is maybe I shouldn't say? Maybe I should say this. I discovered last night. Wow, I'm going to just be honest about this. I discovered last night that I reported a podcast with somebody who's like an hour or something podcast. Somebody who's a friend and is quite pro-Trump. And I said to myself, they have a huge platform. And I went and looked, and they never posted it. And I was like really tough on Trump. And this person was pushing back pretty hard. And we got into it a little bit. And I realized, and it's like, and I said to a friend, maybe I was just a shitty guest. That is a possibility. But I looked at some of the other ones that were posted, and I was like, oh, I don't know, was I worse than that? Kind of thing. So yeah, no, it is, and I'm not holding myself up as like a moral exemplar in any way, because I'm not. I do think that it is true that doing this job now has been really interesting because people turn on you pretty quickly. I mean, they're your friends throughout the Biden administration, and then not so much now. We've seen that over at the podcast that I do, The Fifth Column, which is better in the one way that you have. It's me cut with other drugs. So, but thank you very much. I appreciate it. Who do we got? Joseph with a Ukraine question. Is that right? Joseph, do we have some? There's
Hello,
Joseph.
can you hear me?
Hey, Joseph, how's it going, buddy?
Hey. Yeah, I feel like this podcast so far is sorely absent of anything about Ukraine. So
I know that's what that was the
interject
plan.
a little bit of Ukraine into it.
That was the plan.
I have a brief question about Ukraine, but I kind of want to lead with a very short quote from one of my favorite scholars on diplomacy, global affairs, and stuff. I have it right here because I almost do a seance with it every day. It's sort of something that reminds me of the simple truths that I think we are missing today with something as simple as Russia versus Ukraine. So here it goes.
It's always good to be reminded.
Okay. Ukraine is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country called Russia. Russia is a bigger country. Russia is a powerful country. Russia decided to invade a smaller country called Ukraine. So basically, that's wrong.
Who is that brilliant quote from?
Oh, our esteemed former Vice President Kamala Harris, of course.
Oh, that's right. That's it. I knew it sounded familiar. That was like just enough Kamala for me. I had forgotten about her, but thank you for reminding of her. But she was a terrible candidate and couldn't think her way out of a paper bag. But sometimes that kind of, being slightly intellectually off can distill a point quite well. So correct.
Simple wisdom. Anyways, my real question is, so, I know people who are Trump supporters and stuff, and people who you were referencing people who are not acting principled, because I don't think MAGA is a principled movement. Trump is the barometer which everything ethical in the world is distilled through. And I see these people, I saw with the tariffs, and now I'm seeing it with Ukraine. They try to paint it as some 3D chess move, that there might be some angle here that we just don't see. Do you see that at all with Ukraine, or do you think this is just as bad as it looks? Like it is just pettiness, it's some ingratiation to Putin. I mean, I would like to, believe it's something else, that there's some 3D chess move going on here.
Yeah, there's absolutely not a 3D chess move. Absolutely not. I think it's demonstrably true that there isn't. In the sense that, Donald Trump is the king deal maker who has never made a deal that I've been impressed by. But you have something in Ukraine which is really an intractable problem. And he says, I can solve it on day one, and gets them to a kind of fake ceasefire, which lasts about a half a minute and allows no concessions from the Russians. The Russians don't concede anything, which, by the way, in diplomacy empowers the person that you're trying to restrain. You say, well, we're going to make all these other guys do these concessions. We're going to say all these bad things about those people, and we're only going to say nice things about you. This attack the other day, Donald Trump said it was a mistake. It was a mistake. Just a mistake. Just killed a bunch of people on their way to Palm Sunday services. Just a mistake. Come on. They don't have any sophisticated weaponry. This is a double tap of cluster munitions. This was not a mistake. This is clearly, this is a terror campaign against the Ukrainian people. There's a reason that apartment buildings keep getting hit, hospitals keep getting hit. It's to whine and to really wear them down. So Donald Trump is saying all the things that you would expect somebody who's on the other side to say. And who's in his ear? J.D. Vance is not a fan of the Ukrainians. Tucker Carlson believes that the grocery stores in Moscow, in a kind of Walter Duranty way, are something that could have never been seen anywhere else, proving that he's never been into a grocery store because he has this stuff delivered, I suspect. But that kind of stuff, those are the people in his ear. And I've never seen something so what is the moral compass? You said the barometer is Donald Trump. What is MAGA foreign policy, right? The anti-war types or the isolationist types get mad when they see what's happening in Yemen. They get mad to see how Trump is a Netanyahu stan and supports Israel and retweets Douglas Murray's book. And then they love him when it comes to Ukraine and, saying we don't need to be in NATO. NATO's that's an old institution that died in 1989 with the end of the Cold War. So I don't even know if there's any consistency in this stuff, but they are certainly trying to chip away at him. And, so what happens? I mean, one of the most offensive things that if you are somebody who is a fan of MAGA and says, directionally, this is sort of where I want my politics to go, okay? And you see Laura Loomer, somebody who has like a significant mental illness, as far as I can tell, who's a 9/11 truther who locks herself to the door of Twitter in New York because they banned her account for a few days, like just crazy shit, right? And she is in there saying you got to get rid of the neocons, and they fire 3 people, according to multiple sources, because of Laura Loomer. Like, is this an administration that has a sensible, moral foreign policy that makes sense to you? I mean, it seems to be all over the place, and everyone is it reflects. It's that Rorschach, it's what I want it to be. I'm going to see in Donald Trump that he's an anti-war guy because he didn't start any new wars in his first administration. Well, this is a different administration. Everything has been different this time. So on the Ukraine stuff, Donald Trump's negative reaction to Putin was the only thing that I have seen publicly was when they said, go fuck yourself to the deal that Steve Witkoff presented to them. And he was like, I can't do this. It was the insult. It's all personal. Why does he love Kim Jong-un? Why does he say all these nice things after the little rocket man stuff? Is it because he loves Juche communism? Because he's a Stalinist? No. It's because Kim Jong-un said nice things about him. It's really that simple. I really wish it weren't. And I've talked to many people who know him or in his orbit who have said the same thing. Flattery will get you everywhere. It's a sycophantic relation that everyone, that's why you see all these clips of people in the White House saying, before I go, Mr. President, and it's some Republican from South Carolina saying, no one has looked as good as you. Your hair is, everything about you is fantastic. I just want to put that out there. And it's this competition for sycophancy, which, by the way, is very North Korean, right? Everyone's trying to roll on top of each other. Oh my God, you're the best. You're the best. This is the best thing I've ever seen. That kind of stuff. Why do they do that? Because they want to humiliate themselves in public? No, because they know it works. Because they've been around it. It's not like 3D chess, 4D chess. It's 1D checkers, and they know how to fucking do it. And that's what they do. So I think that on the Ukraine stuff, the 60 Minutes episode the other night was a very, very deliberate thing from Zelensky, who said, they said, do you feel like you have support? And I said, and there was like a 5-second pause. I initially thought he was getting the translation. And he said, no, and I don't know why J.D. Vance hates us so much. That's essentially what he said, right? That's a deliberate thing of somebody who knows that the Europeans have lined up what they need, munitions, whatever it might be, that this is a country that is no longer willing to be humiliated at the feet of a wannabe strongman. And it's embarrassing that Donald Trump said, it was a mistake, what happened on Sunday in Ukraine. And Marco Rubio had some kind of half-assed statement. The American ambassador in Ukraine had a decent statement, but has not been decent the whole way. So anyway, I don't know if it answers your question, but I think that on the Ukraine thing, the frustrating bit is I get the argument that we can't do this forever. We can't fund them forever. It's a meat grinder, has a World War I kind of attrition style, make a, maybe 5 feet here, 5 feet there. I get that. I get that a settlement has to come to. I don't want to see any of those people die, any more people die. And it's been absolute bloodletting. And by the way, no one mentions this, but particularly for Russians, much more so for Russians than for Ukrainians. But it's every one of those deaths is a horrible tragedy. But we're looking at it in a very weird and almost cruel way that, there are videos, there was two videos last week of shot by drones of Russians executing groups of captured Ukrainian soldiers. Like, that doesn't provoke any outrage. This thing on Sunday doesn't provoke any outrage.
Do you suspect as well, Michael, that this whole conflict, and you kind of saw it in the early stages as well, has been coded left and right in a
100%.
specific direction?
100%.
Yeah.
It's a very, very good point. It's been coded in a weird way, like to support the country who has been invaded by its aggressor neighbor, who has occupied it in the past, and who has a recent history of a type of local colonialism that beats anything that any European power had in Africa. I mean, it's like the sheer landmass of Soviet occupation, which went, by the way, to Angola. It went to Nicaragua, it went to Cuba, it went to South Yemen, which is a country that doesn't exist anymore. It went to Afghanistan, which, by the way, precipitated in some ways the fall of the Soviet Empire when 18,000 soldiers died and people rose up. They didn't rise up, but there was a real discontent because of that failed war. 18,000, 19,000 soldiers. How many Russians have died now? A couple 100,000? I mean, this is like a weird coding thing that surprised me because in the Cold War, obviously, being opposed to the Russians was a right-wing thing. Being sympathetic or making excuses for the Russians was a left-wing thing. And that stuff is flipped. You look at any MAGA community on Facebook. This is a fun thing to do. And I mean this, got you try to do this. And if there's nothing there, post a link that is an anodyne story about Zelensky and look at the responses. It's a delusional world of invented, he's worse than Jeffrey Epstein, right? I mean, a lot of the times they're just saying he's a Jew too. I mean, there's a lot of anti-Semitism that's coded into that too. But there is always like, he's corrupt. He's corrupt. And you're defending Vladimir Putin, who hasn't had a free election since he became leader of the country in 2000. They've been free elections, but they're state-controlled media, all that stuff. This coding is the thing that I get back to in this team politics thing, this team playing stuff, is that you want to be on a team. Okay. And my team says that Russia's the good guy because you know what they do? They hate the gays. That's by the way, a huge component of it is the social conservatism thing. Hungary the other day, which all these conservatives now love, Viktor Orban, which is a disgrace, outlawed public demonstrations, like LGBT demonstrations have been banned in Hungary. I'm sure that there's some kind of line or something that I'm missing in there, but it was shot across the bow. This is what we're doing, and Viktor Orban electorally is in a bit of trouble. But this is what they pretend. Pat Buchanan was always the one that was defending Russia. Pat Buchanan, the consummate Cold Warrior, because of the Russian Orthodox Church. They care about tradition. They care about values. That's how they're locking in to Putin. And Putin is playing this stuff so well because the people he's playing to are so dumb. Like the dumb right is a real phenomenon where he says something about trans people, like has nothing to do with Russian politics. And Americans like, hey, like these people, these culture warriors go crazy for it. It's dumb and simple. And they're acting dumb and they're acting simplistic. And if you like a country that invades its neighbors and you want to go back and say, well, we kind of promised them that NATO wouldn't expand. And of course, NATO wasn't on the brink of expanding anyway. Georgia got a little comfortable with the West, so they invaded Abkhazia, Ossetia, fine. I mean, you don't want a border with NATO. Okay, we just created one with Sweden and Finland. Now you have 2 new borders with NATO, you dummies. So none of it's real until you see the people that are living this day to day, whose sons, I went to a soldier's funeral in Ukraine, which was one of the most devastating experiences of my life. It was absolutely horrible. The entire town came out. and these people, they get on their knees. I'll post it on the Substack. I have a video of it. Everyone gets down on their knees as these multiple coffins from this very small village in the middle of the country come in, and we're having fucking podcast debates about it. I mean, I don't know. The whole thing bums me out because I just think it's wrong to invade your neighbors. And if you want peace, get the fuck out. It's not your country. But, well, they did something that made me mad. All right. If that's the way you see geopolitics, we see it differently. Okay, that's fine. But thank you very much for the question. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Gave me some opportunity to talk about Ukraine. Yeah, let's do one more. How long are we going for? 3 hours? It's like a Fellini movie. Jen, do we have Jen there?
Can you hear me?
Jen, I can hear you. How are you doing?
Fantastic. I even took notes. You've covered so much stuff that I've wanted to talk about.
Great. I think that's good, right?
I get equally worked up about the Mangione thing. I lost a daughter in a large part because of the healthcare system, and I managed not to murder anybody.
Wow. So you're the person that when Taylor Lorenz is saying that people have, and again, I mean, to be clear, I hope I was clear about this, that no one can say, I mean, I'm a type 1 diabetic. I was diagnosed in the Swedish healthcare system. I know all sorts of different systems, and I don't think this is a good one. I think it's an enormous number of problems. I just don't like giving in to the idea that somebody was murdered and 2 kids were left fatherless, so therefore let's have a conversation. I always want to have those conversations under different circumstances, but you can have that conversation. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, my daughter, she has brain tumors. She was diagnosed when she was 3, and when she was okay, she was gonna be okay, but we had to have a home health nurse come in, and the only thing that we could afford was Medicaid. The only thing that Medicaid could pay for was like not a great service, and the nurse basically didn't take my daughter's life. So, but I mean, if we sued the company, that's how you do those things. Like you don't shoot some guy that but I actually wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask you more about Batya.
Okay.
I would love to be a fly on the wall when y'all are having any conversation, really. But me and my ex-husband cannot talk about anything related to Trump or even politics at all now without arguing. So we just don't talk about it anymore. Surely you have people that you talk to that have, I mean, I know you do, because Batya, that have strong opinions. What the hell do I do? Like, how do I talk to people without,
Look, yeah, that's a very good question. And let me start by saying on the healthcare stuff, because I don't like giving into that kind of thing where bad people precipitate good conversations. I will note that down, and let's on this show try to have a good conversation about healthcare, and with smart people who have ideas of how it can be fixed rather than destructive ideas about how to ruin other people's lives. But on that thing, I think it's a really good question. And I think it's really easier said than done, because there's all these people that always say, don't let politics affect your relationships and your friendships and everything. I had a conversation literally last night before bed that I was like, that I'll just tell you, I won't tell you what it's about. I will just tell you the last thing that I said was, you can't really fucking believe that. That was literally the last thing I said in this conversation. So it's around me. It's around me a lot. People have opinions. It's a very opinionated time, particularly in social media. I didn't, my mother.
Stay away from social media.
Yeah, stay away from it. My mother, growing, when she was 30 years old, I don't think that she had any idea, the people she went to high school with, what their ideas on the invasion of Grenada were. Now I know what every person I've ever crossed paths with thinks about everything. And you're like, oh God, yeah, that person's a crackpot. I didn't know that. And I've seen this. And by the way, it's most common on like RFK stuff, on like health stuff. People go like, have these wild views about things. And I don't intervene. And I see people fighting about it. It's just like not worth it. It's like, you got to pay me to make me argue about something in a way. But if I think someone's coming from a decent place, I think it's easy. I think it's really, really easy. And the reason I think it's easy is because what is boring about liberal media during the Biden administration and conservative / Trump media now is that it's an echo chamber, and echo chambers aren't fun. They're boring. They're not intellectually challenging. You know what they're going to say about everything. It's a feedback loop. And I guess you want to be encouraged, right? We believe the same thing. And I'm driving my car and Benny Johnson is saying exactly what I thought about this when I woke up. Why do you need that? I listen to things to be enlightened on issues. I've talked to Scotland Sickham, the economist he's at Duke and written a couple books about this, about trade policy. And it's like, I've learned so much from him. I want to learn from people. And I think that one of the things with partisan media these days and partisan people is that they don't want to learn, they want to fight. That's a different thing. That's fine. You want to fight, that's fine. Like people like that combat. Like who won? We were talking about Douglas Murray and Dave Smith and Joe. Like who won that debate? Did you learn anything from it? Was anything that changed your mind? And that's the thing that stops you in journalism sometimes. Like, am I changing anyone's mind? Are people like enjoying this? Like, am I doing something that is useful? And I think that with people and friends, I don't like abandoning relationships because of politics. But there are times when it is necessary, actually, when politics reveal that somebody has a kind of hollow core and they're willing to not want to talk to you anymore. I've never abandoned a relationship. True, I've never abandoned a relationship for politics. People have abandoned me for politics. And that's how I want to keep it. I don't want to abandon anyone for politics. If it is, your ex-husband, I think you probably have more problems than politics with your ex-husband.
Yeah.
That's hence the ex thing.
I'll abandon him for other things.
But I would just say my ex-wife and I have more in common now than we did when we were married. So I don't know. Our politics are pretty good together. But yeah, bad politics from a friend or an ex. With Bancha, I haven't seen her in a while, and she's become much more aggressive on a lot of these issues, and she's all over the place talking about them. I did text her, and I texted her a congratulatory and a very nice note. I still consider her a friend, and I would never abandon that. And I would say, I asked her to come on this show. She's so busy on Fox and saying things that aren't true on various networks that I want to get her on this. But I would sit her down here and just say, "What the fuck is wrong with you? What are you doing? That's not true." But I still love her, and I think she's amazingly talented, both as a broadcaster and as a writer. I think she's wildly wrong about almost everything that comes out of her mouth these days, but I do love her. So I appreciate the question.
It's pretty great.
And thank you for putting me on the spot like that.
Sorry.
No, you're good. And good luck with your ex-husband. Just tell him he's wrong and then finalize the divorce. All right. How long have we been going now? Should we just close this thing up? Are we good? Wow. All right. So we discovered something today. When guests don't show up, we're going to rely on you. The two-way thing is the salvation here. And I just want to thank everybody for showing up and making that a fun conversation. It was fun for me. I hope it was fun for you. And we'll do this again. We'll do the open swim, the free skate, whatever you want to call it. We'll do it again soon. So chime in, subscribe to do we have our YouTube thing? Is that out yet? Like our own YouTube thing? No, it's secret, but it's coming. We don't have to be secret. It's not like we have we've solved cold fusion. It's a YouTube link, but we'll sort that. But subscribe to that. Go over to the Moynihan Report. I think it goes to the Substack. That's going to be live soon. Slowly rolling this thing out, and we're happy about it. We've got a bunch. I mean, this is true. These are people that will not abandon us. We have a bunch of good guests locked in, and I'm really excited about 3 that we have coming up that are going to be great. And one in particular will cause a lot of friction amongst our listeners. I hope that they'll be arguing about this. And of course, let's just say that this show at the moment is made possible by thefire.org, the good people at the Foundation for Individual Rights. And I keep on saying education. It's expression now. They've broadened it because the ACLU fell flat in their face, and there came FIRE to come in and fill that void. Go to thefire.org/Moynihan. Sign up for the newsletter and give them some money. Donate, because they cannot defend people whose free speech rights are being abrogated without paying their lawyers to do so. So please help them out, because they help us out here. And until next time, which I guess is on Thursday, we will see you soon, and come back. And thanks for watching this episode, off the cuff episode of the Moynihan Report.